Okay, so even though when I'm presenting this as a pure exploration, there are actual steps and things to note when we are doing this. The two steps that you've probably heard everywhere if you've checked out about this subject before is that you have to deepen and you have to make the accurate. We'll get to the specifics about that and the misconceptions about this whole process. But the way I want to put this is what we do before we are doing the practice, while the practice, and after the practice. So let's start with the before, the preparation. So the preparation is, there are a few things that we need to know. The first one is about time. Time in two ways. The first is when we do this. So the time can be varied, but basically you would need to have some, it would be more, benefit for you if you have a few hours of sleep beforehand. So this is either going to sleep at night and waking up like the wake back to bed method, like after 5-6 hours, for example, 4 hours, whatever works for you, staying up awake and then coming back to the practice. A lot of times this day I just sleep entirely. When I have enough time, I just sleep the whole thing. I wake up, I stay awake for a while, and I come back to the practice. You can also do this afternoon, which I think this is when I was in Guatemala, that was the times that I usually practice. So it's really good to have some hours of sleep beforehand because you don't want to go about this process when you're extremely tired. At least when you start out, at least from my experience, I know a few people who are able to do this transition when they are actually very, very tired. It actually works perfect for them. But in my experience, that would be the best. And then the second part of the time is that I really recommend you to set out 2 to 3 hours that you're completely free. Now, there is a point in making this. What I found out was that you don't want to be concerned with things that you have to do afterwards. Because when you set 2 to 3 hours, for example, time, it's enough time to know that you can be concentrated here. If you have 1 hour, then it could be that in that 1 hour, for example, you will still have thoughts while you're going to the practice, you're lying down, but you're thinking about the things that you have to do afterwards, right? So it gets you busy, it gets you distracted from the practice itself. So when you set out 2 to 3 hours, you don't even have to practice the whole 2 to 3 hours, which I recommend that you do. But the point is that even if you practice for 2 hours, you know that you still have 1 hour of time that you've set out just for this practice. So it helps you not be distracted from the things that you have to do afterwards. We are living in the Western world, we're all very, very busy. So it's just good for that. And it's important to note that yes, you have to spend a lot of time because you're going to do this deep exploration of just being observant of what is happening. No really a technique here. It's more like just seeing what is happening as we are falling asleep while we're not extremely sleepy like what happens during the night. You can't use that time during the night in this kind of way. If you want to if you're thinking to go around it, it's not going to work the same way. You have to have some level of consciousness to actually observe and see and experience and remember. Other things to note is the environment. Of course, you want it as dark as you can, as it's comfortable for you. Wear loose and comfortable clothes. See that the temperature is fine, not too hot, not too cold. That it's a quiet place, as quiet as you can get. Just really what we're doing, these first steps in the preparations, we're really just eliminating all the excuses. So another thing that we want to look out for is our stomach. We don't want to be hungry and we don't want to be full. So you want to do this practice where your stomach is kind of just fine. If you're a little bit hungry beforehand, maybe you want to eat something light, like an apple or a fruit or a vegetable, but don't be too full that it will bring you down and, make your whole system tired, and then you just fall asleep quicker without any consciousness sustained. And you don't want to be hungry that in the middle of the practice, it's 2 to 3 hours and suddenly, you kind of want to stop because you're really, really hungry. And the most important one is the toilet. Yes. Pay attention how much you're drinking beforehand. Don't be thirsty, but go to the toilet before you start. You don't know how important this is, really. So please do these steps when you're preparing for the practice beforehand. Again, this is to eliminate all the distractions for all the things that you are going to say inside your head to tell you to stop in the middle of the process and continue with your day, because we are getting into this point of doubt that will creep in your head during the practice. And these points, from my experience, are the main ones that will let you just want to stop for some reason. And, yeah. Before we get to the initial part, the main part of the transition itself, that we're doing the preparation, the most important thing to look out for is this tiredness, wakefulness, spectrum meter, whatever you want to call it. So we wake up after a few hours of sleep, or we've already slept, and what we want to note in ourselves is how much are we awake, how much are we wakeful, and how much are we sleepy. So again, we don't want to be too sleepy when we start this practice, because what will happen is that we'll just black out and fall asleep without being able to sustain consciousness. And we don't want to be too wakeful, because if we're too wakeful, we won't be even able to fall asleep. All right? So you want to put yourself somewhere in the middle of this kind of spectrum of wakefulness and tiredness. And you'll have to learn, like the amount of hours that you are going to sleep beforehand, you have to learn this, how much you want to stay awake before you start the practice. So you're in the middle point. You're not too awake, you're not too tired. This is really like all those other techniques where you wake up and you go back, wake back to bed and all these techniques. You really have to take note. You will learn this and you will get better at this the more you do it. And it will just have, you'll just have this feeling of understanding how long you should be awake, or how are you feeling right now before you're heading for the practice. It's something that you will just get the feeling of. Great, very good. So we took care of all the preparation. We're ready to start. We're lying down to make the transition. We mentioned 2 steps that everybody has heard about. One of them is the deepening, which is the most neglected one that people don't really put enough emphasis on. And the second one is the exit. And the exit is that step where everybody heard about all those techniques of rolling out, of using imagination, of seeing us, near the ceiling, or climbing the rope, or whatever technique that you've heard about. That's the exit part. What people don't understand is that, I think, and this was also for me when I was a long time ago trying to learn how to do this, even before what I've told you, is that a lot of people just lie down in bed and start visualizing, start making the action, start, doing the movements. They're starting with the exit part without doing the deepening. Let me explain. There is another spectrum that we have to address. It doesn't work usually if you just straight away go for the technique, go for the exit. There is a spectrum of, let's say, physicality and non-physicality. So non-physicality would be the dream, the astral, whatever you'd like to call it. And there is the physicality where we are right here, right now, in this physical day-to-day life that we know. The more we deepen, something happens, right? When we deepen, we know that in the dream, for example, our state of being, our thoughts, our emotions, our beliefs, they emerge and affect the reality directly. In physicality, it takes a bit time. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work so immediate as it works in the non-physical place. So when we're lying here in physicality, in bed, and slowly we deepen, we're starting to get drowsy, we're actually falling asleep. What we're doing in this exploration, we're actually falling asleep, but we are sustaining consciousness as this happens. And the more we deepen and we go a little further, closer to the dream, closer to non-physicality, this thing happens in our consciousness that we are getting to a point where our state of being more and more get to this place where it affects the reality that we experience in a more immediate way. So whether we are meditating will be somewhere along the spectrum, right? Because we are deepening. And when we're falling asleep, definitely we get until we actually get there. So this is the deepening. This is the first and most important part. Because when we are just here in the physical and we're trying all these techniques, it's still not a state of consciousness that it will happen immediately. We want to make these techniques when we get to the right depth, when we get close enough to this in-between state that we're half awake, half asleep, and there, if we make it there, then we can actually experience this, and this would be the thing that will, tilt the experience and get us to non-physicality. So the first and the most important part to learn, and the most difficult one, and the most interesting one, not the most interesting, but what really interesting is how to deepen. How do we do this? How do we relax? We're basically learning to relax in such a great depth that we are getting to this in-between state. So the way I did it was that, we're lying down and we want to be relaxed, right? You don't want to be intense. You don't want your muscles to be tense. So the first thing I did was to just go through my body the whole time and just see where the muscles are tense and relax them. What I learned along the way is that there is a beautiful correlation between the muscles in our face and the muscles in our body. If you clench your hand, if you clench your fist, but be aware of your face at the same time, you'll see that some of the muscles in the face are also, getting tense. If you tense the muscles in your leg, then you'll also feel different muscles in your face getting a little bit tense. There's this beautiful correlation. And then if you learn how to relax the muscles in your face, then those muscles, the rest of your body would also be relaxed. So what I'm suggesting here is that you can go throughout your whole body and see what muscles are tense and just relax them. But you can also just focus on your face, and it works really well for me. We want our body to be relaxed, and then when it is relaxed, we are starting to deepen. And this action of deepen, the way I do it, again, there's so many ways you can do it, but the way I do it is create this feeling of sinking inside your bed, just sinking very slowly. Now what you will notice, what I have noticed, is that when you start to make this mental action, sometimes the body will react and some muscles will tense. So when this happens, you kind of have to go back to the muscles and relax them. And then after the relax, continue this deepening, learning how to do this very, 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 very gently. And the more that you do this, you'll start to sink and relax and, fall asleep a little more consciously than what we're used to. So when I started out, I kind of had to go back and forth all the time, being conscious of my muscles, making this action of sinking. But when it is a skill that you hone, and eventually today it just happens so naturally, you don't really put your focus on it. It's important to note that when we are doing the transition, a lot of times we'll be more in our thoughts. And it's okay, you don't have to stop your thoughts or anything like that, but it's good to pay attention when you're too much in your thoughts and less in the action itself, the mental action of deepening, of sinking, and to just divert yourself to be more in this action, more creating this action than being just engrossed in thoughts and just lying there and just thinking. Other than that, you just need to stay conscious and just see what is happening, it takes a lot of curiosity. But when you have this, and I'm not worried, I don't think this technique, this way of this exploration, it works for everyone. But if it works for you, I know that you'll make the time. I know that you're curious enough, the curiosity is everything, basically. If you have this immense curiosity, I know that you'll do it and you'll enjoy it. And that's the point, to enjoy it, enjoy the process. So you're being aware of the muscles, you're being creating this feeling of deepening, of sinking, and you're just staying conscious of what is happening in every kind of way, in anything, your thoughts, your body, how it feels, how your thought develops and just changes, and maybe get this weight that I said so before, maybe something else. And it takes a lot of patience. You have 2 to 3 hours to just do this, basically. It takes a lot of patience. And there is a lot of doubt that will creep in. So many times doubt just came in, and, just these thoughts that are telling you, oh, nothing is happening. I've been lying here and nothing is happening. There's no reason to keep doing this. I should just wake up and continue my day or whatever. And this is a beautiful way to interact with doubt, because doubt is everywhere in our lives. And through this practice, you have this like a little bit more of a direct, conscious way of interacting with doubt, because whenever this doubt comes, you need to teach yourself to say, no, this is just a thought. This is my doubt. I'm not going to listen to it. I'm going to stay in the practice. Even if eventually nothing happens after the 2-3 hours, nothing in the sense that you haven't had this out-of-body experience, or you didn't make the transition, you didn't have this experience of the dream building up. Even if it doesn't happen, this is a long process, meaning, not in a negative way, meaning that you just have to have patience and things will change. So many times did I have this doubt creeping in and tell me to stop, but only because I managed to continue, I actually made a transition. Thinking what would have happened if I just listened to the doubt and stopped, then I would never have this experience. It's almost like the doubt, you can use it, as a beacon, as a sign that you're doing well. And there are more of these signs that I will talk about in a second, but it's like you have to go past it. You gotta pass the doubt. And when you pass the doubt, it's like this peak that afterwards, a lot of the times you will be able to make the transition. So it's like this test, if you want to take it like that. And it is really about that, our point of view. If we can direct our point of view where we want to, when we put the meaning that we want, then it will make this transition much easier. And it's something that we'll learn, and it's something that, please take it to your life, day-to-day life, when it is about doubt and when it is just the point of view of you directing the experience. So what we are trying to learn in this specific stage is how to get to the right depth. What is the right depth that I can act from there? And it's kind of hard to say in words. It's something that you'll get through experience, but you will just get to the right depth. And then when you understand that you're deep enough, your consciousness is deep enough to the point where you can create your experience immediately. Like we said, in the spectrum, you find that in between space, then you do the acting. But let's talk a little bit about maybe some signs along the way that can help you understand that you're getting there. So we mentioned the doubt, but another thing that happens as we just, sink into sleep is, we get these spasms, sometimes in our hand, maybe in our leg, that we just, move our body a little bit. They say that it's we're reaching a very restful and calm place, that the brain sometimes confuses and thinks like we're dead, so it sends an electrical signal to just jolt us back to life. I don't know if that's the only reason, but anyways, that's what I heard. So if you get this jolt, it's a good sign. It means you're relaxing more and more. Sometimes you have this, urge to turn around on your side, on your stomach maybe. Then it's a good sign that you're, again, getting deep enough. Don't turn around. Lie on your back, but you take it as a sign, take it as a step that in the right direction, that it's good. You need to keep doing the process. You're deepening more and more. And the reason I say to stay on your back, only because it's usually the most comfortable position we can lie in, that none of our body parts fall asleep. If we're on the side, sometimes it's the hand and stuff like that. There's nothing too specific about it. Another big sign that can happen along the way is the vibrational state. Now, there is a whole talk about the vibrational state, so let's unfold it a little bit. So yes, sometimes when you're making the transition, you get to this right point and you start to feel vibrations around your body. This is the place to exit. When you have this vibration, it is a sign for you to exit. You are in the right depth. But let's talk about this, because for me, for a long time, a lot of people were talking about vibration. And I was like, I don't know what it is. Until a certain point when I understood that I've experienced this before, I just, I put a certain meaning what the vibrations will be like. And I didn't understand that what I was experiencing was actually the vibrations that everybody were talking about. Because for me, felt like, more like this numb feeling that goes around the body, like little ants, I don't know. But once I got it, I could work with it. And it's very interesting because a lot of people are very fixated about experiencing the vibrational state and they're looking for it specifically. But what I want to talk here about is that you don't have to experience the vibrational state in order to make the transition or have an out-of-body experiences. That is not correct. A lot of the times I got this experience, but there's a really good YouTuber, I'll put a link for his video that talks about this. And he mentioned something that I've never heard before. He says that to him, the vibrational state is mostly like the ego resisting to have this experience of going out of the body. And he says, as you continue having these experiences, as you hone this skill, eventually, the vibrations will stop happening. And I heard this at a point in my life that I always had vibrations while going out. It was amazing. It was such easy to know when to do it when you have the vibrations. But then, after some time after that, I didn't even have it in my mind, but I stopped having the vibrations. And I thought that, I lost it. It's done, I won't be able to do this anymore, stuff like that. Again, doubts, thoughts, negative thoughts. But then what I found is that instead, it was like maturing. And now, usually I won't have the vibrations anymore, but what I had to learn was how to know again this specific point and depth to exit from without having the vibration. So sometimes I would think to myself, okay, maybe this is the right point, and I will try to move my non-physical hand. And then I would feel a little bit my physical hand moving. And it's very confusing because a lot of times the non-physical body feels a lot physical, specifically in those states. But then, gradually you start moving a bit something else. You deepen a little bit more if you feel like it's physical, and you relax more. And then you start, and sometimes I would feel my non-physical legs moving while I feel also my physical legs in bed, and really like fun things like that. Other times, I have this in the nostril expansion video that I wasn't sure if I was in the right depth, so I asked dream, like when we are lucid in the dream and we can talk with the dream, with the consciousness, the awareness of behind the dream. So again, knowing that I might be in this in-between state, I just asked dream. I asked dream, is this a dream? And suddenly someone just jumped on me. And I know that I'm alone in my apartment and there's no one here. And it jumped, in this kind of fun way, not something scary or anything like that. And then I knew for sure, that I made the transition and I can just get up and get out of bed and I would be in non-physical reality. So let's mention a few more misguided mistakes that people are talking about, which are really, really not correct. For example, some people say that you are not allowed to move when you're making the transition, which is, basically correct because you want to fall asleep, right? You're not going to move just normally if you want to fall asleep because you're falling asleep. But, there's such a wrong emphasis about it because, for example, some of the things that can happen when you're making the transition is that some of the muscles would get rigid, would get a little bit sore. Maybe we're experiencing, the sleep paralysis mechanism, locking all our major muscles as we are transitioning. Maybe it's that, I'm not sure. But when this happens and you're lying there in bed, conscious, awake, and it hurts, you're not supposed to not move. It hurts, everything that distracts you. So you can move your hand. You just slip it, for example, move your legs a little bit and the muscles relax, and then you can put them back and just keep relaxing. Please move if you need to. if you have something you want to scratch, Don't just lie there and try to be very meditative about it and tell yourself, I will be able to ignore this scratch. No, just, scratch it and go back. And keep on deepening. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Or some people say that you're not even allowed to swallow. How can you do that? How can you not? I mean, it's fine. Don't be so harsh on yourself. Or, for example, people say, like, don't go to the toilet. Well, what if you're lying there for 2-3 hours and you really gotta pee? You're really gonna hold it for the entire 2 to 3 hours? All your attention is gonna go to your bladder. So no. Please, if you feel like you have to go to the toilet and come back. Right. What do you mean, go to the toilet and come back? But then you moved your entire body. You actually went out of bed. But how many times during the night we have to pee and we go out and we pee and we come back to bed and we fall asleep, right? So it's the same thing. You can go and come back and just keep on relaxing. Keep on doing this entire practice. So don't worry about it too much. Of course, you want to stay as still as you can because you're trying to fall asleep. You're falling asleep, which is staying conscious. But if these things pop up, don't torture yourself. That's my point here. How many times did I get to go to the toilet and then come back and then I actually made the transition? So this is a whole process and you get better in it and it will get more natural. But just be forgiving with yourself. The most important, I mention this every time, be forgiving with yourself and enjoy the process. Be curious, see what is happening. So when we get to the right depth, this is the point when we are doing the exit technique. Whatever it is, whether it is just to get up, whether it is to roll, whether it is to fly off, whether it is to start to use our imagination, actively, and then you can really build up the scene around you. This is the easier part because when you're in the right depth, it happens like in the dream, plays out directly like your state of being, like what you're creating. An even much beautiful experience is that a lot of times really don't have to do anything. What I've learned is that, like a lot of people are saying, naturally, when we fall asleep, we just go out of our bodies naturally. We just end up in the dream. It happens every night. We're just not conscious when it happens. So when you're learning to make this transition and you're focusing on the deepening and getting to the right depths, sometimes you'll just get there and naturally you go out of body. Like I said so before, when I was thrown out, I was thrown out. It's like not by me. It wasn't even my choice. It just happened because I was in the right depth and I was conscious of it. And other times where I was just conscious and suddenly I felt, it just happened that the scene was building up around me just naturally. So this second step of making the transition, when you're doing this in this way, you might not even have to make any action. It just happen. So understand, again, the variety of experiences. A lot of people, when they're talking about this, I feel like they're not talking from their own experience. Maybe they just read books and they think it has to be in a certain way. But when you start having the experiences yourself, you understand that so many different things can happen. Every time is different what is actually happening in the process itself. All right, so let's summarize a little bit. We're talking about the preparation, what to do beforehand, which includes being aware of how much time we slept beforehand and to arrange time for us to do this practice, 2 to 3 hours. Being conscious of our wakeful and sleepiness, meter. We want to be comfortable. We don't want to be disturbed. We want to turn our phones off and take care of all of that. We want our stomach to be just fine, and we want to go to the toilet beforehand. And then we talked on the making the transition itself, the second stage, about how we do it, which is really, really about just getting into the right depths, learning how to relax ourselves enough and deepen enough to get to that point where we can just so easily have this transition happen, either naturally or by our own action. And then the last stage that I want to talk about is what we do afterward. And it's very simple, but what we do afterwards, we write it down, we document it. Even if nothing happened, you have learned something, you've experienced something. Whether, you've learned that you need to be more wakeful when you're doing the experience, or maybe you need a bit more tired, because then it will help you to deepen more. Maybe, start describing what you experienced. visually what you have felt, everything. Put it down, write it down. A lot of times I felt like, again, nothing happened when I started out, mostly. Nothing happened and just, I have nothing new to write down. But I sat down and I wrote down, and suddenly I saw, I learned so many small things that I didn't know before. So like a good friend of mine, Ella, she says that aside from all the videos that you're watching, even this one, and aside from the books that you've read, the best, your best friend would be your dream journal, because you can actually learn so many things from your own experiences. And that is the point, don't just believe me, experience it by yourself. And that's what I wish for you. That's what this was the best thing that I would want. And I would really like you to share your experiences, because it's so fascinating for me to hear other people's experiences. So please do. And if you have any questions, if you have any comments, anything at all, please write down in the description. I will do my best to get to everything that you're writing down. So this sums up this video. Thank you for watching until now. I hope this information is useful for you and that it inspires you and makes you curious to go out and experience this by yourself. Please like and subscribe and ring the bell and all that thing, because it really helps the algorithm to send this video upwards in the results so other people can come across it and have this information to make this experience their own. Other than that, be kind, help the people around you, and we'll see each other in the next video.